In 1971, the county health department told my father his springhouse was a public health hazard. They said the water was unregulated.
They said the milk crocks were a contamination risk. They said the whole thing had to be filled in and capped. That springhouse had kept our milk and our butter cold since before my grandfather was born. It never made one person in this hollow sick, not one in 90 years. He filled it in. I watched him do it. He was crying and he did not want me to see, so I stood behind the smokehouse and watched anyway. Here's the part that stays with me. Every food scientist writing today will tell you that flowing spring water at 52 degrees is a better cold store than most refrigerators because the temperature never swings. The county was wrong. They were wrong then, and the paper they used to prove it has been quietly retired. Number 14 on this list was made a felony in 11 states, and the men who wrote that law took money from the same 3 companies that sold the replacement. Number 7 is still illegal to sell across state lines today, and the science backing that ban was overturned in 2009. Nobody changed the law. These 25 things were not abandoned because they quit working. They were abandoned because somebody made money the day you forgot them.
My name is Burl, 72 years in these mountains, and I watched most of this disappear inside one lifetime. Not slowly either.
It went in about 30 years. Before we start, subscribe. What you are about to hear is not survival fantasy, and it is not nostalgia. It is what my people actually did, and most of it still works this afternoon. Let us count down. Number 25, the hillside cistern. Before anybody up here had a water bill, my grandfather cut a channel into the bank behind the house and lined it with fieldstone and lime mortar. Every inch of rain that hit that tin roof went into it. 1 inch of rain on a 1,000 square foot roof gives you better than 600 gallons. He never did that arithmetic in his life. He just knew that a wet April meant he did not have to think about water until the leaves turned. The whole trick is what he called the dirty pipe. The first water off a roof carries bird mess and grit and pollen, so he ran the downspout into a short standing pipe that filled first and spilled the filth out the bottom. Only after that pipe was full did the clean water go over into the cistern. He built his out of bent tin and a rain barrel bung. You can build the same thing this weekend out of $4 of PVC and a cap. Colorado and Utah made this illegal for decades and called it water rights. Colorado quietly legalized it again in 2016, up to 110 gallons. Utah followed.
The rules are falling apart because the method never stopped working. He did not need a study. He had a dry August and a full tank.
Number 24, the springhouse. This is the one they took from us. A springhouse is a little stone building set right on top of running spring water with a trough cut through the floor. You set your milk crocks and your buttermilk down in that trough, and the water runs around them all day and all night. 52 degrees, never 50, never 55. 52 in January and in August because the ground does not care what the weather is doing. Your refrigerator swings 8 to 12 degrees every time somebody opens the door looking for something. That swing is what spoils milk, not the average, the swing. My grandmother kept sweet milk 4 days in that trough in July.
She kept butter 3 weeks. She would set a covered crock of cooked beans in there overnight and eat them the next evening without a thought.
The health code started coming for springhouses in the 60s, and by the 70s, most counties required them capped. The stated reason was surface contamination. The real reason was that the county was selling water taps and a family with a spring does not buy one. There is still spring water running under the concrete where ours was. I can hear it if I stand there. Number 23, the root cellar cut into the bank. Not a basement. A hole dug straight into a hillside, 8 feet back with a heavy door and a vent pipe at the top. 35 to 40 degrees all year, no wire running to it, no bill coming for it. My grandmother put up potatoes, turnips, carrots, cabbage, and apples in there in October and pulled the last of them out in May. The management of it is humidity, not cold. Root vegetables go into damp sand so they do not shrivel. Apples go on the far side by themselves because apples give off ethylene gas and will ripen everything near them into mush. Cabbage goes closest to the door because cabbage will make the whole cellar smell if it turns. A cellar built right holds produce 6 to 8 months at zero running cost. Most counties now require a permit for any structure dug into the ground, even one you dig with your own shovel on your own land. In a lot of places, the permit costs more than the seller. My people never once asked a man in an office for permission to store their own potatoes. Number 22.
Saving your own seed. Every September, my grandfather walked his rows with a paper poke and took seed off the plants that did the best.
The tomato that did not crack, the bean that made in the dry spell, the corn that stood up in the August storm. He spread them on newspaper on the back porch for 2 weeks, then put them in labeled envelopes in a coffee can in the cellar. Next spring, they came up true because they were open-pollinated, bred right here in this hollow for 100 years to this exact dirt and this exact rain. That is the part people miss. His seed was not just free. It was better for this place than anything in a catalog because it had already survived here 40 times. By 1970, the seed companies had begun swapping open-pollinated varieties for hybrids that will not come true the second year. Today, a handful of corporations control better than 60% of the commercial seed on Earth, and saving patented seed to replant is a violation you can be sued over. He kept his beans in a Maxwell house can. Nobody ever sued him for it. Number 21. Soap out of ash and grease. You put hardwood ashes in a barrel with a hole in the bottom and a bed of straw and gravel. You pour rainwater through slow, and what runs out the bottom is lye. You cook that with rendered fat and you have soap. The old test for whether the lye was strong enough was to float a hen egg in it.
If a spot of shell the size of a dime stood above the water, it was ready. Too weak and the soap never sets.
Too strong and it will take the hide off your hands. That soap washed clothes, floors, hogs, and children, and it cost nothing but the ash you already had and the fat you already had. Selling homemade soap now puts you under FDA labeling rules the second you make one claim about what it does. The lye itself is tracked at the retail level in many states because of what people cook with it. My grandmother made soap on the same day every fall, right after the hog killing, because that is when the fat was there. She never bought a bar in her life. Number 20. The burn barrel. A 55-gallon drum with holes plugged around the bottom for draft set out past a garden where nothing could catch. Paper, cardboard, rags, anything that would burn went in it, and once a week you lit it and stood there with a rake until it went down. What was left was ash, and the ash went on the garden. Nothing left this place in the truck. There was no truck. The rule everybody knew was what you never put in it. No plastic, no rubber, no painted board, no roofing.
You burned what grew and what came from paper, and you buried or reused the rest. That rule is the whole reason it worked.
Open burning is banned outright in most counties now, and I understand why, because people started putting plastic in the barrel and the smoke off that is genuinely poison. The ban is not wrong. It is just that it took away something that worked for the people who did it right because of the people who did it wrong. The last time I burned a barrel, I was 51 years old, and a man from the county drove up the hollow to tell me about it. He was polite. He was also correct. Number 19. Apples dried on the tin roof. You peel and core and slice them thin, you lay them out on clean cloth on a hot tin roof, and you bring them in every evening before the dew falls. 3 to 4 days in good sun, and they are leather. The reason it is the roof and not the ground is heat from underneath. That tin gets to 130 degrees by noon, and it dries the slice from both sides at once, so nothing sours in the middle. My grandmother put a piece of cheesecloth over the whole business with rocks on the corners for the flies. When they were done, she strung them on thread and hung them from a joist in the kitchen. And we ate them all winter and stewed them with a little sugar in February when there was nothing green anywhere. Nobody made this illegal. It died on its own because a bag of apple chips costs $4 and takes no days at all. That is the other way these things go. Some were taken. This one we just quit doing. Number 18. The outhouse and the lime bucket. Every outhouse in this hollow had a coffee can or a bucket of slaked lime sitting inside it with a scoop, and you put a scoop down the hole every time.
The lime raises the pH so high that the bacteria that make the smell simply cannot live, and it keeps the flies off.
Wood ash worked the same way when there was no lime, which is why the ash bucket sat by the stove and got carried out. Sighted right, an outhouse goes downhill from the well and at least 100 feet from it, and never in the path where water runs after a storm. My grandfather knew where every drop on this place went when it rained, and that is the knowledge that made it safe, not the building. Almost every county in America now prohibits a pit privy on a property that can be connected to a system, and getting a permit for one is close to impossible. I will say plainly that indoor plumbing is better, and I am glad to have it. But a well-sited privy with a lime bucket never contaminated anything, and the men who wrote those codes were not looking at ours. Number 17, the corn crib. A narrow building with slatted walls, raised off the ground on stones with a flat piece of tin nailed over each stone. Ear corn went in whole, shuck and all, and the wind came through those slats and dried it and kept it dry until you needed it. The two things that ruin stored corn are damp and rats. The slats handled the damp. The stones with the tin caps handled the rats, because a rat can climb a rock all day and cannot get past a flat metal lip that sticks out past the edge. Narrow is the whole design. A crib more than about 5 feet wide will not dry through the middle, and you will lose the center of it to mold. My grandfather's was 4.5 feet, and he shelled out of it in March with corn as good as October. Nothing outlawed the corn crib.
What killed it was the combine and the grain elevator, and by 1975 there were maybe 4 still in use in this whole county.
Ours is still standing. It has a lawnmower in it. Number 16, hog killing. The first hard freeze in November, everybody in the hollow came. It took 8 people, and it took all day, and it fed 4 families through until spring. The cold is not tradition. It is the whole reason for the timing. You need the meat down below 40 degrees within a couple of hours of the kill, or you will lose it, and in November the weather does that work for you. Kill a hog in September, and you are gambling with everything you have. Nothing was thrown away. Hams and shoulders to the salt box, sides to bacon, trimmings to sausage, fat to the lard kettle, head to souse, feet pickled, and the cracklings went in the cornbread. Federal law does not stop you from killing your own hog for your own family. What it stops is the sharing, and the sharing was the point. The minute that meat crosses to another household, it is uninspected meat, and in most states that is a crime. 8 people worked that day, and 4 families ate. You cannot legally do that anymore, and no scientist ever showed that it hurt anybody. Number 15, the salt box. A wooden box in the smokehouse, and hams laid in it packed in plain coarse salt, and left there about a day and a half for every pound the ham weighed.
Salt pulls water out of the meat, and bacteria cannot live without water. That is the entire mechanism, and it has not changed since Rome.
The part that took skill was the overhaul. About halfway through the cure, my grandfather took every ham out, dumped the wet salt, and repacked in dry. If you skipped it, the salt at the bottom turned to brine, and the meat sitting in it spoiled from underneath, and you would not know until you cut it in March. A properly cured country ham keeps at room temperature for a year and gets better the whole time. You can still do this for yourself. You cannot sell it in most states without a facility, and a facility costs more than most of these farms are worth. Number 14, the smokehouse. Here is the one I told you about at the start. A small type building of logs or plank, hams and sides hung from poles near the roof, and a smoldering fire of green hickory in a pit in the dirt floor. Not hot, you are not cooking anything. You want smoke, and about 90 degrees for 2 or 3 weeks. The smoke does 2 jobs at once. The phenols in hardwood smoke kill surface bacteria, and the whole thing dries the outside of the meat into a skin that mold cannot get through. Salt handles the inside.
Smoke handles the outside. Together they will hold a ham for 2 years in a building with a dirt floor and gaps in the walls.
Green hickory or apple. Never pine, never anything with pitch in it, because that will make the meat taste like turpentine and no amount of washing takes it out. Selling smoked meat cured this way became a felony in 11 states under the Meat Inspection Acts. And the trade associations that pushed hardest for those rules were funded by the large packers who could afford the facilities and knew perfectly well that the small farms could not. That was not about safety. Nobody in this hollow ever died of a country ham. It was about who gets to sell meat. Number 13, rendering lard. The fat off the hog goes in a big kettle over a low fire and cooks slow for hours until it turns clear and the solid bits float up brown. You dip out the clear fat, Strain it through cloth into crocks, and it sets up white and keeps for a year in the cellar without going rancid. The bits you strain out are cracklings, and they go into cornbread, and that is the best cornbread there is. Low and slow is the whole thing. If the fire gets up under it, the lard scorches, and every biscuit you make with it for the next year will taste burnt. One hog gave my grandmother enough lard for a year of biscuits, pie crust, and frying.
Lard makes a better pie crust than anything sold today, and every baker knows it. They told us for 40 years it would kill us.
Then the research came in on the trans fats in the hydrogenated shortening they sold us to replace it, and it turned out the substitute was the thing doing the damage. Nobody sent a letter apologizing to my grandmother. Number 12. Wood ash. The ash bucket by the stove was not trash. It was three things. On the garden, it is potash and it is lime at the same time. It sweetens sour mountain dirt and feeds the potash straight to the beans and the tomatoes. Never on the potatoes, though, because sweet ground gives potatoes scab. In the dishpan, a handful of fine sifted ash cuts grease off a skillet better than anything in a bottle, and it will not strip the seasoning the way modern detergent does. And on ice, it works better than salt on a wooden step because it does not eat the wood and it gives you grit to stand on. Nothing stopped anybody from using ash. What stopped it was that fewer than 1 house in 20 burns wood now, so there is no bucket by the stove to carry out. We did not lose that one to a law. We lost it to a furnace. Number 11. Spring water piped down by gravity. If you have a spring above your house, you never need a pump and you never need power. My great-grandfather dug out the spring, botched it in stone, laid a line down the hill on a steady fall, and ran water into the kitchen that has not stopped in 100 years. Every 23 feet of drop gives you 10 pounds of pressure. 50 feet of fall, and you have city pressure at the tap forever, with no motor and nothing to break. The two things that make it work are a fall that never runs uphill even 4 foot, and a screen box at the spring so no leaf or salamander gets in the line. Most counties now require any household water source to be tested and permitted, and in a good many of them, a gravity spring simply cannot be permitted at all regardless of what the water tests at. That water was tested. It was tested by 4 generations drinking it. Number 10. Green beans in a water bath. I have to be careful with this one, and I am going to tell you the truth on both sides. My grandmother canned green beans in a boiling water bath. 3 hours, jars packed tight, and our family ate them every winter of my childhood, and nobody was ever sick. She is also wrong, and I have to say it. Green beans are a low-acid vegetable, and a boiling water bath will not reach the temperature that kills botulism spores. A pressure canner will. She did not have one. What kept her family alive was salt, absolute cleanliness, and the fact that she pressure cooked every single jar on the stove for 20 minutes before it hit the table, which does destroy the toxin. She had a second wall, and she never skipped it. So here is the honest version. The method is not safe. The way she used it was survivable because of what she did after.
If you can beans, use a pressure canner, and I am not going to tell you different to make a nicer story.
Some of what the old people did was better. This one was not. Number 9. Selling at the gate. Eggs, milk, butter, honey, a hog half, seed potatoes. There was a coffee can on a post at the end of the lane, and people left money in it and took what they came for, and nobody ever stole from that can. That little trade is what paid the property tax on half the farms in this county, not the crop, the gate. Cottage food laws now govern almost every bit of that. In most states, you cannot sell milk or butter at all. Eggs need to be candled and graded past a certain volume, and the meat cannot be sold at any volume without inspection. Some of those rules protect people. I will not pretend they are all foolish.
But the effect, whether anybody meant it or not, is that the small farm lost the one income it could get without a middleman.
My grandfather sold $3 of eggs a week, and it covered the taxes. There is no legal way for his grandson to do that today. Number 8. The wash water went on the garden. Nobody up here ever poured water on the ground twice for nothing. The tub from the Saturday wash got carried out and thrown on the corn. The dishpan went on the flowers by the porch. The water, the milk buckets were rinsed in, went to the hogs. It worked because of what the water had in it. Lye soap is potassium-based and potash is fertilizer, so that gray water was feeding the row while it watered it. The month somebody brought home a bottle of modern detergent, my grandmother stopped putting the dishpan on her flowers because she could see what it did to them. That is the piece people get wrong when they try this today. Gray water is only good for a garden if what you washed with is good for a garden. Reusing household gray water is against plumbing code in most of the country, and in a fair number of states it is a violation even to carry it out in a bucket. She carried that tub out twice a week for 50 years. Her corn was the best in the hollow and she never bought a pound of fertilizer. Number 7. Milk from your own cow. This is the other one I told you about at the start. 2 gallons a day out of 1 Jersey, and off that you get sweet milk, cream, butter, buttermilk, and clabber, and whatever is left goes to the hogs.
One animal standing in a field eating grass that grows itself. The handling is the whole thing, and it is not complicated.
Clean hands, clean bucket, wash the udder, throw away the first squirt from every teat because that is where the bacteria sit, and get it cold inside an hour. The Springhouse did the cold. Selling raw milk across state lines has been federally prohibited since 1987. More than 20 states prohibit selling it at all, and in several of them you cannot legally give it away to a neighbor. The science those bans were built on has moved a great deal since then, and a fair amount of it was overturned by 2009. The laws did not move with it. I am not going to tell you raw milk is free of risk, because it is not. I am telling you that my family drank it for 4 generations, that the handling decides it, and that nobody who wrote those laws ever set foot in a Springhouse. Number 6. The wood cook stove. 1 cast iron stove in the kitchen that cooked 3 meals a day, heated the whole house, dried the wash above it in February, and heated the water for the Saturday bath. It has no dial.
What it has is places. Directly over the firebox is where you sear. The far end of the top is where beans sit all day.
The warming shelf holds the bread. The oven runs hot on the fireside, so you turn the pan halfway, and every woman who cooked on one knew her own stove's hot corner the way she knew her own hands. You judged the oven by putting your hand inside and counting. If you had to pull it out before 20, it was ready for bread. The EPA emission standards that took full effect in 2020 made most of the old designs illegal to manufacture or sell, and many counties now require any solid fuel appliance to be certified and inspected before the house can be insured. Ours heated this house 60 years on wood we cut off our own hill. There was no bill. There was November and a saw. Number 5. What grows on the bank? Ramps in April on the north slope where the ground stays damp.
Sassafras root in spring for tea, dug before the leaves come out, because that is when the flavor is down in the root.
Poke greens, but only the young shoots, and boil through twice with the water thrown off both times, because the mature plant will make you badly sick and there's no shortcut on that one. Morels around the dying elms after the first warm rain. Blackberries in the fence rows in July. Hickory nuts and black walnuts in October, and you lay the walnuts in the driveway and let the truck take the hull off. The rule that kept it going was that you never took it all. My grandfather never dug more than 1/3 of a ramp patch. That patch is still there, and I dug it this spring. Ginseng is now regulated in every state where it grows, with a season, a permit, and a minimum plant age. That regulation is correct because the diggers stripped it. Foraging is banned outright in most public parks. He took 1/3 and left 2/3 for 60 years, and nobody had to make him. Number 4. The ice house. Cut blocks out of the pond in January, haul them up on a sled, stack them in a pit or a stone building, and pack sawdust into every gap and a foot of it over the top. Sawdust is one of the best insulators there is, and it costs nothing at a sawmill. Packed tight around the blocks, it holds them frozen into July, and in a good year, clear into August. The stacking is the
blocks go tight against each other, never spread out, because a big mass of ice loses cold slowly and scattered blocks lose it fast.
You cut a drain in the floor so the melt runs out instead of sitting there eating the pile from underneath. That is how there was ice cream in this hollow in July of 1930, with no electricity within 9 miles of here. Nothing outlawed the ice house. The Frigidaire ended it, and I am not going to pretend that was a bad trade. Number 3. The hand-dug well. Dug by 2 men, one below with a pick and one above on the windlass, 3 feet across, down until they struck water and then 8 feet past it. Lined with dry-laid fieldstone and no mortar, so the water comes in through the wall the whole way down. Where to dig was the real knowledge. My great-grandfather read the ground, and I know how that sounds. He looked for where the sycamore stood, where the fog sat in the morning after a clear night, where the frost went off first in March. Every one of those is a real signal of shallow water, and he could read all 3. The well is capped, the mouth stands above grade so surface water cannot run in, and it sits uphill of every animal and every privy on the place. That sighting is the whole of well safety, and it always was. You cannot hand dig a well in most of this country now.
It takes a licensed driller and a permit, and the depth minimums in many counties are set past what a hand-dug well can reach.
That well ran 106 years. It never went dry, and it never made a soul sick. Number 2, newspaper in the walls. When they built onto this house in 1938, they packed the stud cavities with wadded newspaper and sawdust, and there are walls in here still insulated with the depression. Cellulose is genuinely good insulation. What gets blown into walls today is shredded paper. The physics has not changed at all. The difference is that ours was untreated, so it would burn, and it would take in a mouse family in a hard winter. They also papered the inside walls with newspaper and flour paste before the wallpaper went on, and that dead air layer stopped the draft coming through the plank. I had pulled out a section of that wall and stood there reading the news of 1938 with a pry bar in my hand, Roosevelt on one page and a hog price on the next. Nobody manned it. The fire code did effectively, and on that one, the fire code is right. Number 1, the neighbor. I have given you 24 things, and every one of them is real, and most of them still work this afternoon. If you take one thing out of tonight, do not let it be a technique. None of it worked alone. Not one piece of it. The hog killing took 8 people. The barn raising took 30. When my grandfather broke his leg in the fall of 1949, 4 men cut and shocked his corn, and nobody discussed payment because the March before he had done the same for 2 of them.
That is the actual technology. Everything else on this list is equipment, and that is the one nobody took from us with a law.
There is no code anywhere against knowing your neighbor. We set it down ourselves, one household at a time, because we got a car and a paycheck and a television, and we did not need each other quite so badly on any particular Tuesday. The Springhouse was filled in by the county. The corn crib was beaten by the combine. The ice house lost to the frigid air, and good riddance to the sled and the pond. The neighbor we quit on our own. So here is what I would ask of you. Go look at your own place and ask which of these you could actually do. Not all of them. Most are not coming back, and a few of them should not. But the cistern will still fill. The cellar will still hold a potato until May. The seed will still come true. The ash still belongs on the beans. And if the man down your road breaks his leg this fall, you already know what to do about it. Your grandfather knew, and nobody had to write it down for him.